Hey guys, if you're new here, welcome to the channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. I am so excited about today's video. My husband and I did a contest on Facebook where we asked people to send us photos of their horses, and we selected some of our favorite photos that we thought would make great artwork. So this is the first one I selected. I really love the detail in this horse as well as the colors in the horse, and I thought it would make a great tutorial. So today I would like to show you guys a little technique on how to draw fur specifically on a horse. I'll mainly show you guys and talk about the forehead of this horse, which is where the most of the hair detail is, but I'll talk a little bit else about the process as I go along. So when I'm doing color pencil portraits, and I'm using the Prismacolor Premier color pencils, I really like these pencils. They have really good colors and they work really well on the base wood that I'm using. So when I'm using these kind of pencils, I really like to start doing the main part of a portrait, and that is the eyes. And so this horse obviously just has the one eye because of the picture, and so I wanted to start with that. Primarily it's just a personal choice for me, just because I like to, as I'm working on a piece, see the main focal point. And then also I do like to take progress pics of my artwork when I get to certain places that I really like, because I like to share that on my social media as well as send that to a client if I'm working on this piece. I did like to send this photo to the client that I was working on this piece for. So, and then also when I do the subject as well, the eye, I like to do a little bit of the fur around the eye before I move on to the rest of the piece. I am using a little bit of the fur technique that I will be going over later on this video around the eye, which is where I normally lay down a block of color, the first layer of the fur, and then I go over with the detail. Most of the time in this horse in particular, it is lighter colors like the white that you see and the light blue, and then I come over with the darker blues and grays and things like that first. And you see that a little bit here in the eye. I'm adding a little bit of that light blue around there. I'm adding a little bit of the white when it's closer to the left side of the eye, and then I come over with my darker colors. And for fur, the main key is layers, adding extra and extra layers of fur on top of there. And the more layers of fur, the more detail you add, the more realistic the fur is. So when I'm starting with this fur on the horse to the left side, it's not as detailed as the forehead of the horse. So it's a lot more blended out. I'm not using the actual strokes of the fur in here. So what I do is I like to start with my white. That's the primary color that I see, the most dominant color on this left side of the horse, and I lay that down first. And the reason why I like to lay that down first is when I'm adding these other colors, like these browns right here and these grays, right now as I'm laying them down, they're too dark for me. So I go back with my white pencil and I blend them in so that they come out lighter, and I go back and I darken a little bit areas. So it's a little bit back and forth of darkening areas and leaving some dark areas and other light areas. And it's nice to do that with the color, blending it with the color that you originally laid down. Now as I move across with this white, I'm moving around where the mane is at, because I don't want to, when I'm coming in with the oranges and the peach colors and the red colors in the mane's colors, I don't want the white to interfere with that, so I'm going to go around where the mane is supposed to go. Again, here I am, I'm adding some light grays that are up in the corner of the horse right here, blending them in. So that base color that you're laying it down allows you to blend colors in, and a lot of it's going back and forth with your darker colors that you're laying over top of it and the white color. Prismacolor does make a colorless blender, so if you don't want to lay down a color first and then put colors on top of it and have that color altered as you're blending it, that's a good one to use. I primarily like to use, especially when I'm doing fur, whatever color I lay down first as my blender. So here I am doing a little bit of a darker area. This is a really dark area right here, so I don't mind coming in with this dark area first instead of a light color, and then coming back with lighter colors just to add a little bit of detail. So I'm just going back and forth here. Now I'm going to start adding the colors of the mane in here pretty soon after I finish the rest of these very light grays that I see coming in here. And like I said, this is not the focus of the picture, so it's a little bit more blurred out, a little bit more detail. You can tell this is where obviously the horse's head is going back, and so it also gives you depth perception when you don't have that crispness of the hair detail or the fur detail in there. So now I'm coming in with the main colors. I'm adding a little bit of the browns where that area is a lot more darker. I'm trying to go around where I see a little bit of the light grays mixed in there so I don't get those too dark. You definitely, when color pencils, you don't want to lay down too much of a dark colors if you have lighter colors that are supposed to go over there, because it's very hard to come over with the light colors. Now in this other area, I'm coming in with a light yellow and a light orange color first, and then I'll come back in with my browns and my blacks and things like that, and I'll go over those. And I'll also come back with some lighter colors as well, like my white, if these yellow colors are too strong in certain areas, just to lighten them up. And then also come back and just add a little bit more highlights as well. When you're working with other mediums such as oils and pastels, you can at certain points add lighter colors on top of dark colors, especially when oil painting dries, or if you use thicker paint, or if you put a spray fixative on top of a pastel, you can add lighter colors. With color pencils, you don't really have that option, so you do really have to be careful when you're adding in lighter colors over darker colors. So here in the background of the horse, it is also white as well, so I lay down a white in that whole area right there, and then I'm coming back in with my light grays and also a little bit of where the mane flares out, and adding those details in there. And it's, like I said, again, it's going back and forth, blending with that white. If I go too white, I'm going to come back in and make it a little bit darker. And now I'm working on the rest of the mane right here. This also, like I said, is not very detailed. I'm not putting in hair details, so most of this is going to be very smooth, very blended out, because I want to give the illusion that this part of the horse is farther back, it's blurred out, it's not in focus, and then the center of this horse is the eye as well as the hair in the forehead. And I really liked about this portrait is the colors in this whole horse. I love these peaches, these oranges, reds and yellows, and these red browns that you see in the mane, and I really love that next to the cool blue colors that you see in the forehead. That's probably one of the other things that really attracted me to this piece in the first place. It's just because all those colors are so rich and so beautiful, and especially to do them in color pencil as well. As you can see in certain points of this portrait, I do like to put a piece of paper down. Even though color pencils do not smudge as much as pastels, they can still a little bit. And because I decided to start with that eye first instead of working from left to right, I put this piece of paper down so that I don't smudge too much of the piece. Prismacolor does make some really good erasers. You'll notice this black triangle type eraser that I use on occasion. That one does pretty good for erasing color pencils, but if you do draw too dark or too deep into the grain of the wood or the grain of the paper, obviously you want to erase completely, but it does help pick up some of the color as well. So just be careful as you're moving around on your piece if you're going to go over a certain area with that with your arm, especially because your hands and your arm has oils on it. You want to be super careful. Alright, so this is the main part of the piece right here. This is the forehead, which I would primarily like to talk about for this tutorial. Now, because there is so much fur detail going on in this whole portrait, I am going to start going by sections. So the first thing I was doing there was I was adding that light blue color down first. That's my base color. And now as you see, I'm coming back in with some blacks and some dark browns in there as my detail. Now, if there is certain areas where I don't like what I've done there, like it's too dark of an area, I can come back in with that light blue and come back and smooth those in and blend those in. There is a lot of layers of fur. Some of the fur in the background isn't as crisp as those in the foreground, so I blend those out just to give that illusion that when I can touch this painting that I feel like I'm touching a horse, or it looks like it's actual horse fur. And that's where you're going back and forth and making some strong colors stronger than others, and other ones less smooth and less crisp. So on top of this light blue color is also, I'm laying down this slightly darker blue color, and then I'll come back and forth with this brown color as well, and I'll just smooth them out to my desired color. And the reason why I'm just working in a section at a time, you see the area I'm working with first, it's a light blue area that I laid down, is because there's so much fur in here and they go a lot of different directions that you can kind of get lost as you're doing this piece. And when you're drawing your layers down, like even with that light blue and this darker blue, the browns and the blacks that you lay in, you want to go in with the direction of the fur as you're drawing with it, just to give motion and more realism to the fur, that it's actual fur. It has motion, it goes a certain direction. You don't want to just lay it all in one direction. And that's another reason why I go in sections, is to kind of go with the flow of that fur. And the more colors that you can add to a piece, the more realistic it's going to look. There's so many colors in just one subject alone, that the more of those that you add, the more variety that you add, the more different mark makings, whether they're crisp or they're smooth, the more realism that you get. So now that I've gotten that one section primarily around the eye done, now I'm working on the middle part of the horse, the forehead right here. I wanted to lay down that darker brown first before I came back and went through this whole piece with this light blue color, just so I can kind of map out where my fur is going, because again, there is a lot of fur going on in this horse in this area. This is a big section of my piece, so I just kind of want to help myself figure out where I'm putting the fur, the directionality of the fur as well. And then I'm coming back with this light blue everywhere else. Again, that is my layer color. It's super helpful to put this down so that I can blend colors underneath it really well and smoothly into it. If I was to use a white on top of this to kind of blend it in there, it would more be a highlight than actual blending in there. And Prismacolor does make these woodless pencils. They're like sticks. So when you do have large areas like this of a single color, you can actually purchase certain colors in those sticks, and it does help if you have really big areas. A pencil does take a little bit longer. In this piece, I prefer to just use the pencils, just because when I was laying down that light blue color, I was still trying to go with the directionality of the fur as I'm laying it down. But it would definitely take less time in the white area that I laid down, as well as this light blue area, to have one of those colorless sticks. So those are super handy. This area is a little bit darker, so especially on this right side that I'm working on first, I'm going to dial in this area primarily before I get to the rest of the horse. Like I said, I'm still trying to do it like a puzzle piece, where I'm breaking down the sections and working section by section to make it a little bit easier. So I've laid down my light blues in that area, and then I came back with that darker blue on top of it, and now I go back with a lighter brown, and then I go back with a gray area as well. And once I get those darks come in, I go back with that light blue and that darker blue, and I change, because there is a darker blue in here that was not really in my palette, even though I have a large selection of pencils in my palette. So again, sometimes you have to make your own colors, and so I take that, and you'll see in the rest of this piece that I'm doing right now, I'll take that dark blue and I'll blend it over my browns just to make it even darker blue that I wanted to get. So again, here I am laying primarily over with this darker blue over the light blue. After I go in with that brown, I use that brown just to kind of help me again with this larger section to map where I'm heading out. And that's, easier for you if you can kind of cut sections down, that way you're not getting lost in areas. Obviously, I'm not getting every single piece of fur detail in there. I'm going to get, a good chunk of these types of clumps of fur that you see in the piece and the areas, like especially on the forehead and things like that, just to give more of a realism. But I'm not making exactly every single mark that you see in the photo with my artwork, just because that would take so much time. But if you give that illusion to what you're doing, then it'll add a lot more realism to it. So I'm almost done here. I'm just going back and forth. I'm adding a little bit of my white highlights where I want them. I'm adding a little bit of my darker areas, just adding those details up, lightening areas that got too dark, darkening areas that weren't dark enough, and until I get to a certain point where I like it. So now that I'm done, I'm adding those tiny little bit of stray hairs on the top here and the whiskers. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys have any questions, please comment them down below. And if you like this style of video, please let us know. And we'd love to do more of these. My husband and I work with a lot of different style mediums. We paint with oils, we do pastels, we all do all kinds of different stuff as well as graphite. We don't just do animals, we do people as well. So if you would like a tutorial on people or even landscapes, please let us know. We'd love to do the video for you. I hope you guys enjoyed and take care. All right, bye.